All right, we're recording.
Oh.
Welcome to Table Talk, guys. Super excited to have Megan Kelly joining us all the way from the UK. Super happy that we could find a time that worked. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan shortly. But if you guys don't know her from Instagram already, you'll definitely be inspired by her in the next hour because she's a beast. So Megan, I only know virtually through the internet, but I'm a big fan. And she's a Strong First level 2 in SFL, I believe, and also a world record holder for swings in 1 hour. So I'm going to be asking her a million questions, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys to also ask towards the end of the hour, because I'm sure you guys have questions too. So without further ado, Megan, if you can kind of tell us a little bit about you, how you got into training and coaching, and then we'll go from there.
So I started training with kettlebells about 10 years ago now. It was about 2012, towards the end of, and it was actually, I've said this before on over podcasts. I quite often talk about mental health, and it was actually I got into strength training because my own mental health wasn't good, and I had seen a therapist. I was only 22 at the time. And she said, yeah, I really think you should get into some training, which is quite rare over here. I mean, I don't know how it is in the States, but for a therapist to advise that, I fully agree with it, but for them to advise it is quite rare. I think they need to do it more. So I was just very anxious about get more into my dad later on in the show, I'm sure, but my dad was very poorly and he died a couple of years ago. And I think when I maybe became aware of him being that poorly, I think I kind of got anxious about maybe me getting it. So it was like health anxiety. Could I get poorly? And I was saying it now, I feel like I'm so far away from that person that I can't imagine me being in the state. But I mean, I wasn't sleeping. I was having panic attacks. I was really struggling. So yeah, my therapist said, I just had 12 sessions on the NHS over here. And she said, I really, really think you should get into it. So I was like, why not? And then there was a local kettlebell class about 10 minutes down the road from me. So I was like, I'll try that. Why not? And it really did kind of just go from there. I got really like, wow, this is so cool. Like I want to get more into this. And from there, that's probably how I started my coaching career, because I was like, people need to know about this.
So was that a Strong First gym that you went to, or was just
no,
someone
it wasn't. Me and the guy who I went to, me and him ended up doing our first SFG together. So he
cool.
said, I'll go for it and I'll do it too. So I was like, yeah, why not? And he actually did he did a world record with me when I did my first one. So he got the male one at the time, which it got broken fairly quick. I think he was kind of more doing it because I was going for it. So it was like, let's do it. So yeah, he did his at the same time as me. So yeah, we kind of worked together. Not so much now, just because we're both busy doing separate things. But years ago we did, and it all started from there.
So then, how did you learn about Strong First?
So I originally heard of Strong First by doing the Tactical Strength Challenge, and again, who trained me said, why don't we, at the time it wasn't particularly big in the UK, so he said there's a gym in Glasgow and they're holding this competition, and Glasgow is about 4 hours north of me, so I'm northern England, but that's obviously kind of mid Scotland, and so I was like, yeah, let's go for it. There was nowhere else near, so I I didn't really think anything of it. I kind of, at the time I was doing the flexed arm hang, and I was like, I'll get like, I trained up to kind of like doing just over a minute, and I was like, yeah, cool. I wasn't particularly bothered about it all, except the kettlebell side of it. So I think my deadlift was something like 95 kilos, and I hadn't really focused much on barbell at all. And then I got the guy who was running it, who was obviously strong person. He said, if I see anybody doing more than something like 130 snatches, he was like, the technique will be really bad, this and this. And now I see him often at courses, and he always laughs his head off because he counted my snatches. And at the time I was using 12 kilos, and I did 164 with the 12. It's like, she's like, how did you do that? And he was like, I believe you if I didn't count that myself. Anyway, so I was like basically first place in the snatches, and then the others I was like miles off, like 90th and stuff. So like, that's cool. And then I was like, maybe I need to up my pull-ups and deadlift. And then he said, nah, I think you should go again next year, but do it as the go in the 16 category. So I was like, really? Do you think I'll be able to do that? And then next year I did it and did 146 with the 16. And he was like,
oh my God.
My deadlift was like 100 and my pull-up was 1. So I was like, oh, well. And then he was like, definitely do your SFG. And it kind of went from there. And that really did, that moment probably change my life, like doing the SFG.
So did you have like any other endurance background, or you just found that was your like unicorn strength?
Yeah, I'd done bits of running, but nothing like competitive. I don't enjoy running. And so nothing. And then before I got into strength training, I used to go to the gym, but probably how everyone does, absolutely no idea what I was doing, like 10 minutes on the treadmill and then like a bit of like machine work, and then I'd go home and I was kind of like not eating, like classic sort of like teenage girl, like 18, 19-year-old girl, like not eating a lot and then thinking I have to burn thousands of calories at the gym. And that was my background, but I was not competitive in anything. And at school, I didn't even like PE. So I was a bit like, why snatches? But he was like, this guy was just like, you're just really good at like ballistic work. He was like, you need to look into that.
Seriously, that's insane.
I stopped doing the TSC probably when I started training for my first world record, which was 2017. So I kind of stopped doing it then, and that was just after I'd got my SFG. So I kind of focused more on that. I had a lot of work to do to pass my SFG. So I would quite openly talk about I don't like overhead press, and everyone always jokes at Strong First events like I've got really stupidly long arms, and everyone's like, I'm always like, yeah, I've got a lot of press, but also I think because I don't particularly like it, I don't spend much time doing it. So I'm always like, yeah, it's easy to say you're not good at it, but I'm like, but actually I kind of have it in my training because I have to. I don't really put much.
I can relate to that. When I did the SFL with Hartle, the overhead was okay, but the bench press I'm just very awful at. And he was like, your arms are so long and you are so bad at this lift.
He was like, look at your arms. And I was like, yeah, they're long. I'll use that excuse.
Oh my God.
But when I see your overhead press, I'm like, whoa, like that's gold.
I think I just like use my legs to press overhead somehow. I don't know. Oh, someone's trying to call me at the same time. So kind of circling back, you said you started training the first time for the world record in 2017. Was it kind of this like revelation with the TSC snatch test that made you think like, okay, maybe I could do this for an hour?
It actually was nowhere near as planned as that. It was, so I did my SFG. I say this often more to try and maybe inspire people. I got pulled up at my SFG for having a shocking swing. So, and then from that point on, I was like, right, I don't want to have a shocking swing. I want to they kind of were like throw your partner under the bus, and I was like, I'll throw myself under the bus really. Like, but my partner was like, yeah, she's like doing something weird with her knees, and she's not really hinging. So I got taken up to the front, and it was well, I had Sean Cairns and Jason Marshall. I think he was senior at the time, but Sean Cairns was master instructor. And then which was great. They basically were like, right, do this, this, and this. And from that point forward, I was like, I want to, like, I passed my SFG at the time, but then I became obsessed with getting better at. I was like, I want to be better at these movements, and so I started training the swing a lot more, and then going back to my dad, which is where it kind of all loops in. He had MS, so that's what he ended up dying of in the end. But we were doing a fundraising thing, so I was like, let's do a 12-hour swing-a-thon. So a lot of people, it was so much fun, but I might do it again. They keep pressuring me. They're like, we need to do that. So so my idea was that basically between me and everyone I teach, and just friends and people who had trained with me over the years and stuff, we were gonna, between us, keep a kettlebell, at least one kettlebell, swinging in the room for 12 hours. And we weren't going for a record. It was just like, put your name down on the wall, like, let me know what time you can come. And I was just making up really stupid, like, sweaty workouts and stuff with swings. And there was a time, it was like midday, there was no one on the thing, and I thought, like, oh god, I'm going to be stood here swinging on my own. So I kind of was like, I'm just going to say I'm doing a world record, that'll get people down. And I kind of announced it, and then I was like, what have I just I genuinely was like, what have I just done? I think that was May 2017, and the record was July. And at the time, I was like, it's fine. And I've talked about this in my article that I did for Strong First, how very wrong I was, thinking, oh, I can do 20 minutes of swings, so I'll be able to do an hour, and which was very wrong. So I started training, and very quickly I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, and I was basically going for the 24 kilo bell, and I was thinking, right, if I get 20 reps a minute for 50 of the minutes, then I can use those 10 minutes as break between, like, sort of 10-minute blocks maybe, and then and I'll do that. And then I started training, and I hadn't done strong endurance at the time. I'd read about bits of it, but I wasn't sure. But I thought, I'm just going to do 20 on the minute. And then after my first practice session, I was like, this is not happening, because my forearm, like I couldn't even grip the bell. So I was like, oh god, that was only 20 minutes. So I started reading a bit into strong endurance, and I was like, okay, if I maybe do 10 every 30 seconds to give me, like, even though it was only a short break, like 15-second break, that might work. And that did work. So I started training more, and then I trained very differently this time, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but I kind of just did that and was like, right, I'm just going to keep up in it, and then have a few days where I'm going lighter, and then there were a few days where I focused on power, but at the time that was just 32, and I did something like a 20-minute session with like 10 reps on the minute, and I just focused on really, really powerful swings, and didn't do any more than that. And then I did get the record. I did 50 of the minutes, 10 swings every 30 seconds. So I think like 20 minutes, and then I had a couple of minutes break, and then as I needed more rest, I kind of took it later on. I think I got 1,012, but about 12 of them were no rep. The standard is very similar to Strong First, so they have to be kind of like chest height. And towards the end, my first rep or so of each set was too low because I was knackered.
Right, right.
At the end, I was kind of just going for it. I was like, just swing, just pick up the bell. I had no strategy at the end. It was like, just swing until you can't swing anymore. Put it down again. Kind of worked for most of it.
The first time around, was Pavel helping you with the programming, or how did you guys connect?
So he didn't really know anything about it first time round, and it was Brett Jones. I think I've got him as a friend on Facebook, and he'd seen me post that I was waiting for approval from Guinness, because it takes, unless you pay for a judge, which is ridiculous, it's like £7,500.
What?
Unless you pay for a judge, you wait about 12 weeks. So you have like you have to set up some cameras and you have to have a specialist witness. And so I just got someone from Strong First, Claire Booth, who's like the leader of Strong First GB. I got her to come and witness it. And then, yeah, we had to have a few witnesses and people like timekeepers. And then they get back to you in about 12 weeks, but it's worth it for this. I was like, I'm not paying £7,000.
Yeah.
So I'd posted saying, as long as everything's approved by Guinness, then I should be a world record holder in about 12 weeks. And Brett commented saying, I think it's about time you wrote an article. So about how you did it. So I wrote it, and I actually talked about that and how the mistakes I'd made, and thinking that just because you can do 20 minutes means you can do an hour. And so I talked about that, saying like it really did like make me rethink and realize, yeah, this isn't going to be as easy as I think it's going to be. And also, I wrote a lot about the mental side of it, because it was physically difficult, but mentally it was very difficult. So I wrote about that. And then I went on, it was 2018 now, so kind of forwards a year, I went to Budapest and I went on a Strong First Second Wind course, which Pavel was running. And I didn't really say much at the time, but I met Hunjin, who, do you know Hunjin from South Korea?
Just like through Strong First, but no, not in person.
Not met her before. That was the first time I met her, and she was Iron Maiden and Sinister, and we ended up hanging out quite a bit. And she'd mentioned something to Pavel, and later on it was kind of like he just said, "Oh, you're Megan who did the record." It was very, yeah, "You're Megan who got the world record, aren't you?" Yeah.
That sounds like Pavel.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I was like, yeah. Like, oh my god. I kind of just was like, does Pavel know who I am? Like, I was a bit like, what the? I kind of like read books and stuff, and I was like, ah. And he was like, I know, he just said, well done. And I was like, okay, cool. And then again, a couple of months later, he was in I went to Strong Endurance in Italy, and that was my first time doing it. So about a year after the record, and it was huge. It was a massive event, so I didn't get to speak to him at all. And then they came to the UK to do Strong Endurance, and that was June 2019. And at that point, it was a smaller group, and he knew me, and he said, if anyone ever gets that record, just like if you get someone takes it off you, just let me know. So I was a bit like, and in my head I was kind of like, it's a once in a lifetime thing, like I don't know if I want to do that again. And I didn't say anything at the time, and then I heard about 2 months after that it had been beaten. So I was like, and again I said to Claire Booth, who's leader of Strong First GB, what do you reckon I should do? And she was like, email Pavel. So I emailed him, and he was like, do you fancy getting it back? Because if you do, I'll program. Basically, wow. I think he's it's probably more of a test, because like for him, like, so it's like sort of trying out different things, and he probably just knows I'll do it, because I don't think he'd get many people doing 90 minutes of swings, because it takes me all my energy mentally to do it. But I think he's kind of like, okay, so for him it's probably like an experiment. For me, I'm like, what? But yeah, so, and here we are.
So how often are you doing swings? Is it like 3 times a week, or how often?
Yeah, so it's 3 times a week, and then depending on my energy levels and how I'm feeling, I can fit in a 4th day, which is more like a play day. So I tend to have that anyway, and it's not necessarily swings. I was playing quite a lot with heavy single arm swings, but then it could be just sort of like get ups and snatches, or any sort of, so just something to keep. Sometimes I'll just have a day where I don't really like bench press, but sometimes I'm like, I really want to bench press, so I'll just randomly bench. No program, just basically focused on the other days. But I do get-ups all the time, and I take pull-up stuff and press-ups and things like that, just to keep those movements in, and they don't take it away. But yeah, other than that, it's mostly that for the volume. It's just 3 days of swings. Okay. I did attempt, I don't know, some people know this and some people don't. I was very open about it, but it depends when people started following me. But in March 2020, I did attempt the world record. So I trained with Pavel from the August, so just sort of like 6 months. And I think I got 828 reps with the 32, which was about 75 reps short. I was going for 1,000, similar kind of format, 10 every 30 seconds, but with the 32. And I was going to go for 50 of the minutes and use the break. But we're still not 100% sure. I was well prepared, but the weight then, it was over half my body weight. So it went from being a 24 to then obviously 32 is quite a big jump.
Mm-hmm.
But also, just before the pandemic, and the gym where I was working, they were asking for us to put obviously a lot of gel on our hands, which was fine with COVID and stuff. And I don't know, my hands were quite soft. And what stopped me was actually my hands tore too early. So in training, I mean, I never let them tear. They're like fine there, they don't tear whatsoever. But in the attempt, they tore with about 30 minutes to go still. And first time round, happened with about 5 minutes to go, so I could handle it, because I was like, it's 5 minutes, it's just gonna be 5 minutes of pain. Whereas when it went at 30 minutes, I was like, oh no, this is going to be horrific. So it meant that basically when I was supposed to be doing 10 reps, I was getting about 7, and then I was having to, my hands were in agony, so I was having to put the bell down. I had a lot of people I teach there, and I was like, do you know what, they didn't know, they had no idea what I was going for. So I just thought, I'm just going to carry on and just mentally prove to myself that I can do an hour with a 32 with everybody watching and me inside knowing that I'm going to fail it, but because I knew that so I did do that in March 2020. And then after that, I spent all of the lockdown basically just swinging away and recovering, and just being like, right, I'm just going to continue until I feel really good, and then and then go again. But yeah, it's 3 times a week that mostly that I'm swinging.
So do they calculate it based on tonnage then in an hour? Okay.
Record is, I think it's most amount of kilos lifted in an hour by kettlebell swing. So very recently I've been playing around with different strategies. So you can use different weights, but there's obviously pros and cons of that. So if I'm doing a 44 kilo bell and a 32, if I do the 32 feels very light, but then when I go back to the 44, it feels probably heavier than it would. So it's interesting. So you can do that. You just can't do single arm. So I can play around with bells. I'm playing around, which you've probably seen recently, with different kind of same amount of reps per minute, but different like reps rather than equal reps. Sort of maybe today I did 5 and 3 with the 44, so I did 5 swings on the minute, 3 on the 30, rather than 4 and 4. And my heart rate seems to recover better because I get that longer rest after the 3. So it's like tiny little thing, but one, you'll know over time, 1 rep makes a big difference. So taking off a rep a minute makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so kind of like intra-session, you're still adhering to the waviness.
It's been really interesting, actually. I'm enjoying it.
So then your volume in a given week, is that also wavy in terms of the time commitment of the session, or?
I tend to have sort of like a power session where that's usually about 60 minutes, but it can be up to 90. And most of the reason for that 90 minutes is mentally, like to stand in front of a bell for 90 minutes is really difficult. And I like it in summer because I basically stand outside and I'm like, oh, it's like vitamin D, and I can look at the scenery, and just I kind of use that as meditation, because I get like a long rest, so I don't mind in summer. But in winter, when I've been kind of stood, especially in the lockdowns, like stood in my kitchen, I've been like like really like all of my mental energy has gone into staying in front of the bell and swinging. So I do hour session, which is usually up to anything between 60 and 90, and that's usually on the minute. So I'll do like 5 reps with a heavy bell on the minute, and then I tend to do like a shorter, I'm doing more of this at the minute. Well, every 2 weeks I do like a kind of glycolytic day, so it's more like I'm swinging every 20 seconds, so I've got an extra pick up per minute than my normal every 30. So energy wise, I can normally do 15 minutes, and then I do a couple of minutes rest and then go again. So that's usually like 32, and I'll do 4 reps every 20 seconds, which you're barely putting the bell down. So that's just what kind of give me a little bit of exposure to going glycolytic. And then I tend to have one that I call my endurance day, which is more like I'll do, usually now it's with the 40, but sometimes with the 32. It totally depends on how I feel. With the 32 I can do more reps, obviously, and that's every 30 seconds until I feel like I'm losing power. So that could be up to 90. On good days it is up to 90. And actually mentally that's easier because I don't have that amount of rest that I do on the minute sessions. So I kind of have 15 seconds and I know I've got to go again. Whereas on the days it's like a good 50-second rest where I'm like, but I just try and focus on breathing and think, right, I'm just trying to I'm meditating. That's what I go with on those days.
Do you listen to music while you train, or?
Yeah, sometimes I do. If I'm outside, I'll sometimes, depending on like if it's like nice, and I'll listen to just kind of everything around me. But music, I kind of have it as background, so I don't have it as really loud, like blasting music. I tend to actually tune out of it, but I do have it there. And some people argue that no music is really good, so but I think it just helped me just to stay a bit focused and sometimes have a in between my sets rather than talk. I'm like doing the talk test, but I do the sing test. I'm like, yeah, just see if I can sing and then I'm okay to go again.
I can relate to that. That's awesome.
I had to change your training a lot when my dad died in August 2020, and that's when I'd kind of, after the rest, when I was probably at my peak fitness. So actually that's taken a lot longer for me to probably physically recover than I thought, because I had to massively change it. So those days, and I talk about this a lot with people I teach, and it wasn't to do with COVID, a lot of them and me have lost like a parent in the last couple of years, and I taught, and I'd always known, like, oh, you need to, if somebody loses someone, or if they're grieving, or if they're stressed, like reduce the training and do whatever, just keep them moving, but make sure it's not too strenuous. And I kind of knew that, but then when it actually happened to me, I was like, wow, like I suddenly realized how much it can take out of you. And it was, I was obviously emotionally tired, but that really, really affected me physically. I felt really drained. So at that point, Pavel just said, until you feel good, you're not going glycolytic, and you're just going to do very, very easy sessions. So then I went back to doing sort of like 3 reps every 30 seconds, and just to keep moving, but for sort of 45 minutes. Trying to just nasal breathe, so with a weight that I knew I could nasal breathe the entire time with. So it was very interesting to see how that had to change, and probably for much longer than I expected to. But so my volume then hugely decreased on those, like it was probably about 8 months until I actually felt good again, like that. I was like, actually I feel like I'm getting better than where I was. So that was hard in terms of mentally for me. I was quite far back in my program, but then now I can totally see why that was necessary.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about your father. I remember you posting about that, and I think it's hard to go through. I haven't been through that, and it's even harder to share it with people. So I think that's really important too.
I was trying to, at the time, I was trying to be like, I didn't want sort of attention or anything. I was literally trying to be like, just very factual. This is how I've changed my training. And basically, I highly advise you do the same. It was more the sleep, I think, or the lack of sleep. And I was tired, but I couldn't sleep. And I think that's probably all part of grief and very normal. But I remember that side of it. I just woke up and I felt like I carried on teaching and stuff. And when I was working, I felt okay, but probably because my mind was not on like the death of him. Whereas when I was actually training, I found it very, very physically tiring. And it was probably, I wasn't eating that much. I was not sleeping like very well, or I was waking up in the night. And so I tried to kind of just be open about it in terms of, look, this, like I was, obviously trained to say, right, there's someone stressed out, this is what you do. But actually, when I've been through it, I suddenly realized how much I needed to adjust it for myself. And then it made me think about other people I teach. And I was thinking, maybe I needed to make them go even easier, like question yourself. But yeah, it was, I just thought people needed to know in terms of their own training rather than sympathy for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I think like, people sometimes say like stress is stress. And I think there's some truth to that, which is that one of the reasons we all love training in this way is because it is like a complete stress management system, because every body can handle a different level of stress. And sometimes it's hard to look on social media or wherever and see people doing crazy things, but everybody has different requirements within their life, whether it be personal or financial or their job or kids and pets and things like that. So I think it's really important to like take all of that into account. And it sounds like you've really implemented that for yourself and your students too.
It helped me, like when I looked at my training, I was like, right, because there were days where I would feel totally overwhelmed, where I was like, how am I supposed to, like, I'm only 31, or at the time I was 29 at the time, so I was about to turn 30, and I was thinking, how am I supposed to go and carry on like with my life without him? And so I was having, like, and I think again it's very normal. I was just going through the stages of grief, but I was thinking, right, how do I? And I looked at my training. I was like, right, for my training, when I've got a 90-minute session, that feels overwhelming sometimes. So I was like, how do I do, like, what do I do in that session? And I was thinking, I just break it down, and I just think I'm doing one rep at a time. So I was like, right, I'm just going to do literally one day at a time. Like, I'm not going to think, oh, when I'm 50, like, I won't see that, which is what I was doing. Like, oh, 20 years time, I still won't see my dad, which sounds like really weird, but people who've lost people will probably get it. I was thinking I could go anywhere in the world and I won't see him, and all of these weird thoughts. And I think I was getting very overwhelmed by it and thinking, right, yeah, I don't need to look at the next 20 years or what he's going to miss or all of these things. I just need to look at one day at a time, how am I managing that day? And that hugely, hugely helped. And I wrote a post about that, and I got a lot of people saying that's a very good way to look at it. But more, I was trying to help people as well. Like, I was like, I'm just trying to be very honest with how I'm going through this stress, and and even if it's one person.
How do you help yourself to refocus when you kind of feel the anxiety coming in?
Yeah, what do you do? And it's like, and like you said, most people, whatever stress it is, a lot of people go to training, and that's how I originally got into it. So I was like, right, I need to look at that.
Yeah, training is a great meditation. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger would talk about that, where he would imagine himself like inside his bicep as he was doing a bicep curl. But it really forces one to be present, and not necessarily because you're in so much pain or you can't breathe, but if you're really just like focusing on the movement and the task at hand, then it's hard to think about other things too.
About what you're actually doing, like right there at that moment in time. You can't really think about anything else. And I think that's why it's so good. I get a lot of people coming to me for that reason, and quite often, well, they think it might be a physical goal or something they want to achieve, but actually when they've done it for 6 to 8 weeks, the first comment is very usually, oh, I feel much better mentally. And maybe they didn't even realize they needed to feel better mentally. But I think themselves that time, to like a bit of time to themselves, if they've got kids and they're really busy or stressful lives generally, work-wise, like when they suddenly give themselves that time, they're like, wow.
Yeah,
better.
Exactly. So regarding the record, do you think you'll attempt it again soon, or what is your timeline looking like?
Very much hope. I kind of want to get it out of the way before summer, because I don't know what it's like there, but here in summer it just gets very humid. So I did my first one in July, and that was a mistake because it was really and I like training through the humidity, because I think you come out of the other side much more conditioned, and it's good and you feel great in winter. But I don't want to do it in summer, but I don't really want it to drag on until October, which is when it kind of cools down. So I'm hoping, my training's gone really well this year, and I've really prioritized like sleep and eating properly, and like the back end of last year was very like much that. It was like partying Christmas, like my 30th, we were in lockdown. So on my 31st, which was November, everyone was like, let's do a 30th. So I kind of had 6 weeks of party, which was great. But then after that, I was like, this my training was, I was doing it, but I was like, I'm not present in my training. I'm just kind of doing it. And I was like, and I need to, I mean, I was getting the reps done, but I was like, that's for me, I was like, I kind of need to actually be thinking about it. So ever since Christmas, I've kind of been like, right, sleep, like, no, I don't drink a lot anyway, but no alcohol on like a Saturday, just so I sleep well, and all of that. So I'm hoping in the next 3 months to get it done. So that is my timeline, but I'm going to see how it goes, but it's feeling strong. So
all right, well,
and
we'll be following you and watching.
I'm trying to work out like the strategy now. So yeah, that like what weight I use, like what reps I do, so it has been really good actually playing around with that. So I was doing kind of 10 on the minute with the 32, and then 2 on the 40 I was doing with the 44 kilos. And so if I can build that up, and that'll work really well. So I'm hoping, because then I get longer rest. So and again, it's that kind of waviness in the sessions that you're talking about. So
will you do like another dress rehearsal and then do the official one later?
I'm going to go fairly soon. I'm going to do the volume and just see how, like, so I'm trying to get 32,000 kilos, which was where the original 1,000 with the 32 came from. But that might not be the best way to do it. So, so I'm just going to maybe do the 32,000 kilos just in as much time as it takes and see how I feel, just so that my body has had that load in one session. I mean, I'm always around kind of like 26,000 in a session, or my heavy sessions are up there, and sometimes 28,000. But those extra 4,000 kilos are quite it's quite a jump. So so I'm gonna play around with it, and then see how that feels. And then I'll probably what I did last time was kind of do about 50 minutes at a very similar volume to what I'd need to do, and then see how that feels. But
crazy.
And mentally harder, because I know I like failed. I don't really like the word failed, but I didn't get it last time. So I think mentally that's where I've been trying to focus my efforts and be like, right, I just need to massively visualize doing it, which I did do the first time round. I kind of visualized how I'd feel in the last 10 minutes, and would I be in pain? Would my hands be ripped? Which was a yes. And so I'm going to try and go through all of that again. And that helped. People agree with like the visualization thing. It's powerful.
Yeah, we had a guest speaker a while back who talked a lot about that, and how you can kind of go through the whole thing in your mind as many times as you want, and at the end of the day, you are already a world record holder. So no one can take that away from you,
how am I doing this again? Because I genuinely did say once in a lifetime. Yeah.
Well, you're like a cat. You have 9 lives.
I'll turn away from the sun. Like, which is rare. Like, how am I sat in the sun? But we have no.
So what else do you do when you're not swinging kettlebells? What do you like to do for fun?
I love going on walks. So I go on a lot of walks. We're in a really hilly area in the UK. So my group of friends also love doing walks, and I love spending time with them. So we quite often do that, and we'll go on like breaks up to like weekend breaks to Scotland and climb some mountains and things like that. So I love that. I love taking pictures. So I take too many pictures, but I just love looking back on them and having like, when Facebook says, so you ever go today or whatever, like I love memories. So I love taking pictures. I'm not particularly good at it, but I enjoy it.
I love seeing on your story, the landscape there looks so beautiful.
Yeah, we are very lucky. We're in the middle of like a hill range called the Pennines, and there's a lot of like runs around here. So a lot of like my people I teach, a lot of them are like fell runners and endurance runners. So my swing work goes well with them. But yeah, so I don't run up the hills, but they're trying to make me. They're like, you'd be a great fell runner. I'm like, I'll walk. But so I mean, I a lot as well. So I enjoy like spending time with them and learning new things. But yeah, spending time with friends, huge thing. That's where I spend most of my time. And that's very important to me. And they're very they've been really supportive all the way through, like with the like, so they know, right, I'll see them. I'm not like, I'll often leave early and say I'm going to bed, but yeah, they're very, very supportive.
Oh, that's great. My mom used to live in London for about 7 years, so I have been over to the UK a few times, but not really up north. So hopefully one day we'll get back.
Loads of people say, yeah, you can come stay. Loads of people say have been to the south, and they always think I'm Irish when they hear me talk. They were like, "Are you Irish or Australian?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just from the north of England." But I think everyone has a southern English accent in their head, and then I'm fairly near Manchester, sort of like maybe 45 minutes. We can get a train to Manchester in 25 minutes, so I'm near. That's the biggest city to me. But yeah, so that kind of northwest of England. But yeah, way below Scotland.
Will you ever come to the US for any of the certs, or you pretty much stay in Europe?
No, I would look. My best friend actually moved to Nashville in 2018, I think, and I was supposed to visit her in 2020, and I obviously never got over there. She's coming back here in a couple of weeks for a visit, so we're going to plan, and I was going to try and team it up with going to one of the Strong First certs over there. I was like,
yeah.
I've never been to. I've been to like Central America, but I've never been to the States. So yeah, I would love to.
Oh wow, we're only like a 4-hour drive from Nashville, 4 to 5, so pretty close.
Well, that's when I drove up to. That's about 4 hours when I did the TSC. So yeah, it's not that.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. We'll all come find you if you come to the US. Don't worry.
In real life, I feel like I've got down, especially got loads of like virtual friends, but I feel like I know you.
Yeah, likewise. Well, I want to make sure there's some time too for other folks to ask any questions if you have questions. I think I muted everybody, so if anyone has a question, just make sure you unmute, or you could type it in the chat if you're feeling a little shy. I
end up with chaos in my classes when they like to talk to each other because they know each other. So if they happen to be online, I mean, I love it. It's crazy chaos, but it's like last night one came on and started kissing them in front of everyone, and I was like, "You're on screen, fully on screen." It was great. It was recorded with like they just have like half of that.
Someone's got to ask.
Okay, I have a question. Do you consider yourself a very competitive person? You know, like when you got started with this whole thing, were you like, was it just kind of like a fluke thing, or were you like, this is for me, this is what I need to do, and you know?
It's a really good question, because everybody always asks me this, and my friends and family, whenever they know when they hear me talking about my record, it's alien to them, because I am the least competitive. I'm not even joking. I am the least competitive person. I was like, well, how? And this is why it was really weird when I was like, do I get the record back? Because in my head, I was like, I'm just not competitive. But then when I knew someone had, like, in my head, I was like, that's my record. Then I was like, right, I'm getting it. But I am not in the slightest competitive. Like if a lot of the people I teach can do things like much heavier than me, and I'm like, yeah, go, I love it, like I don't care. I don't have to be like the best in the room, but for some reason with swings I'm like, no, that's my record.
Vicky, were you going to say something? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, who's talking? Is it Carla? It's going to be me.
Go ahead, Nikki.
The Southern girl. As you can tell, I have a Southern accent. Well, you probably won't be able to tell that now because I've been here for so long, but I come from West Sussex, so I'm a little bit below from you. How do you go about, if you get up in the day and you're like, I'm really not into it, like what gets you to get there to do it?
So sometimes I do wake up and I think, and I've got to train or whatever. And some days I genuinely like I actually will be too tired. So some days I'll be like, maybe I just need to do movement today. And if I've slept badly, especially, I'll focus, I'll just move. I won't do really much lifting. I'll just kind of do a mobility complex. And sometimes I'll start doing that and then I'm actually feeling pretty good. So I just go for it. If I still don't feel great after I've done that, I'll leave it and just say that that's just a nice sort of light rest day or movement day, and just go for a different day. And then other days, that would be if I was physically tired. Other days, mentally, it's more that I just know I can't be bothered. And I always say to whether it's swings or whatever you're doing, I'm like, if you do 5 minutes mentally, if you're not feeling like you can be bothered, usually after 5 minutes, you're like, I'll just do it a little bit more, and I'll just do a little bit more. And I tend to go from there. But if I do feel like that, I won't do like a long session. I might think, right, I've done 40 minutes. For me, that would be fairly short. Normally, like when I've got the world record back, that will probably be a long, high volume day for me. But at the minute, that's short, and I'm like, right, 40 minutes, that's better than nothing. Even 20 minutes, better than nothing. And I just move on from there. But yeah, usually if it's mentally, I do that. I'll start and try and carry on. And if it's physically, I do just listen to my body and rest, and maybe even nap. I love napping. So if I'm moving, I'm like, I go to sleep. Like, so lazy, really. Lazy and not
That's awesome. I think we've touched on that before, kind of like what is your tipping point, right? That gets you to start moving. So you mentioned the mobility complex, or we'll sometimes do like cars or things like that. And usually once I get my neck going, I'm like, okay, I'm here now.
The minute you start it, it's like, okay, yeah, fine. Do it.
Yeah.
And then other days I might think, actually, I don't want to actually lift weights, but I'm just going to go on a walk. So I'll still try and do something, but it might be that either physically or mentally, either if my head's not in it, then I just go, see how it is.
Afrat wrote in the chat, what's your go-to warm-up prior to a session?
Okay, so I tend to do get-ups, and again, that will depend on, I always do get-ups. I'm obsessed with get-ups. It'll depend on, like if I'm doing heavy swings, I will usually do light get-ups, and vice versa. So it'll depend on what I'm doing. I then will do usually sort of like some warm-up swings, but I tend to use the first 5 minutes of my session as like warm-up swings. But if it's like a heavy day, I might do like a set of 10 swings and some goblet squats, and I'll always do like crying goblet squats to open up my hips a bit. I might do something like a downward dog complex, just some downward dog to cobra, and then some breathing. Breathing's always included. So depending on how I'm feeling, it might be crocodile breathing. So I'm just lying on the floor trying to activate my diaphragm. Other days I do like forced exhales, which is actually something Pavel asked me to try. And I actually, it's not even long, but I hate doing them because it's, I really have to get my brain in gear and be like, right, and it, because it's an uncomfortable feeling, more uncomfortable than swings, definitely. So yeah, that's that's always fun. But I basically have to lie on the floor and then exhale for as long as I can. Towards the end of it, I'll like cough up, it was his explanation, cough up the remaining air and then hold. And then I basically hold it until I feel like I need to breathe in. And I'll only do about 5 of those. So I might do a circuit of like a get up, some goblet squats and that, and repeat it maybe 2 or 3 times. And well, definitely not 2, 3 or 4 times. And when and then the exhale is supposed to, and it does work, it was supposed to, in between my swings, I never get that, in my rest period, I never get that urge to gasp in. So I've like basically trained the breathing muscles to be able to tolerate like higher volume, and I don't ever get that urge to breathe in or gasp in for air anyway. But yeah, I hate training it. I actually, which is a part of my, like, oh, I've got to do forced exhales, but it's just an uncomfortable feeling.
Do you ever do that kind of recovery breathing in between your sets?
Yeah, so sometimes, depending again, if it's kind of like a lowish volume day, or if it's a day where I would class it as like my 60% day, I'm not really going that heavy or whatever, I'll do nasal breathing, and sometimes even in the actual reps, which is quite interesting because normally I do the like power breath, but trying to like breathe in and out through the nose for the reps as well is interesting, but it keeps me very calm and my heart rate low. But yeah, I'll quite often in between sets, I'll just sort of breathe in and then and try and get myself back to, and my heart rate recovers very quickly doing that in between, and a bit of dancing and shaking.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Like, have you got like a nervous twitch? And I was like, no, I'm dancing. I got nervous twitch.
This is like a looping back, I guess, when you mentioned you kind of base your training on how you're feeling, like it could be 60 to 90 minutes. Do you ever track things like HRV, like heart rate variability or things like that?
A while ago, and it's something I was doing, and I need to get back into it. And it's one of those things on my list, and I talked to a couple of people I teach about it, because I'll be there like giving advice on stuff, and I'm like, but actually I know it, how, like anything, not necessarily the heart rate side of it, but like any sort of advice. And I'm like, but I do know it's one of those things in the back of your mind that you're like, that would be really useful for me to do, but I need to back to doing that. So it is something I used to do, and I don't really know. It was maybe when my dad died. I don't really know when I got out of it, but like some point in the last like 2 years. But yeah, that is something. There's a guy, he's called Aris, and he actually did some like sort of co-coaching with me. I think he's SFB, and he's from the States, and he was teaching me, like sort of trying to teach me, because I'm rubbish at it, the 1 arm push up, and I was going through some. He's very much into like strong endurance and AFA training, and he was like, you totally need to do that. It would be so good for you, recovery wise. So that is probably on my list now. I need to write on there, like, do that.
I was just curious. Patrick's been doing it daily pretty much for the last 6 years. And I don't do it. I mean, I track my heart rate, or like I'll sometimes do a resting heart rate reading, but I just think it's different for everybody. Like some people are really into that ring or all these different ways. Maybe it was just bad timing for me, because when he first started, I had a newborn. So I had like a horrible score every day. And I was just like, well, I'm training. Like, this is what I got to do. But I think as you get more into the nitty gritty, and when your training is very specific, it can be interesting, because if you know, like, oh, I have this total volume for the week, but I got a 2 out of 10 on this day and a 10 out of 10 on this day, I'm probably going to rearrange things to maximize that.
I have like one of those, not on me because I took it off because I was doing get-ups, but the like a Garmin watch that I do sleeping and stuff, and that I never know how much I trust it, because sometimes I'll feel amazing. I'm like, oh, I've got loads of energy, and then I'll look at my watch and it's like, you're tired, you need to sleep, and I'm like, so, and that's supposedly stress and things like that, but I look at it sometimes and I'm like, I feel like I've got loads of energy, yet my watch is telling me right. So yeah.
That's where it can be a catch-22 a little bit.
I loosely use it. But yeah.
Anybody else have questions before we wrap up?
I was just going to ask you how you fuel yourself for the endurance. Like, do you follow a certain program for diet?
This is really interesting, actually, because I know a lot of endurance athletes. I train fasted the vast majority of the time, and I know a lot of endurance athletes. I mean, in terms of fat, they tend to eat before it, but also they tend to be higher carb. And I have always done high fat, low carb, so I tend to prefer to train fasted, and that is, I'm not keto or anything, and I love, like, at the weekend I'll eat pizza, like, but the vast majority in the week I find, for my own, like, well, for teaching as well, I just feel like more alert, and like I don't have the brain fog if I do higher fat, lower carb, and yeah, I tend to, just because of where my swings end up falling on my training in the day, they kind of fall like maybe mid-morning, early afternoon, before I so I finish my morning sessions and I'll go back to teach in the evening. So it tend to fall in that period, and I'm like, I don't really want to eat yet, because then I know I have to wait a bit longer. So just over time, I guess my body's just running off its own fat store and fueling me like that. So I tend to eat more like that, and then obviously higher protein. But yeah, I don't. Fabio, who's a master instructor, he was actually supposed to be helping me with some nutrition plan going up towards the record. So maybe around now, seeing if there's anything like that we could alter. But I'm sort of like at the minute I feel like it's working well, and I feel like I've got good energy and my swings are strong. So I'm kind of in the mind of, if it's not broke, then don't fix it. But it would be interesting, because I'm like, maybe I could feel even better or more fueled. So yeah, I tend to do high carb, low fat, and then no, wrong, high fat, low carb, and then I was like, that doesn't sound right. Fasted for my training, but yeah, that is definitely not for everyone. There's people I teach and they're on a higher carb diet, and that's fine. That works for them, and they also, if they train fasted, really struggle. So, but for me, it works well. I don't know about you. What do you do, Rachel? Do you prefer to have food, like eat before?
I have to eat all the time.
I mean,
I eat like every 2 hours, or else I get dizzy and faint. I'm just a big wimp. But
that's way, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I think it's just, I would love to train fasted, but generally I train like between 1 and 3 in the afternoon. So
it's a bit later.
I have to have a little bit on board before that, but
there's certain where I end up not training until 3, and I tend to at that point have maybe eaten at about 1, and I know I've got a bit of a gap for it to kind of settle and go from there. So it just depends. Vast majority I would train fasted, but that just works for me.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Any other questions, guys? I want to get a picture too.
Just a comment that this is very inspiring. You have a great attitude, and I love your mindset about not being competitive. I love that.
Hilarious that I'm not, but I really am not. Thank you.
Afrat said, thank you so much. This was awesome. Amy said, this was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me and for finding a time.
Yeah, so it was awesome. Let me take a picture real quick if you guys want to be on the screen. If not, no worries. Oh, hey guys. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. So I have recorded it. I remembered that much. So I will put it on to our YouTube channel, and then you guys can watch it again or share it with whoever you want.
I need to get on that channel as well. I need to listen to some other people.
Yeah, I've recorded like 3 or 4 that I remembered to hit the button. So
so much.
Oh, Maggie said she was listening and working out. So that's awesome.
I love it.
All right, Megan, thank you so much. Where can we find you?
My Instagram is mostly where I train, post on my training anyway, which is megan.kelly, and then I think it's .1. But yeah, I'm on there most of the time. And I'm going to try and get back more on my actual grid. I was posting loads of information on there, and then I kind of again stopped. My stories are always on, so you'll see me.
Awesome. And there's a link on there for your article, right? In your bio.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
you so much. This was awesome.
Have a lovely day over there.
Thank you. You too.
Great. Bye.
Bye.